see you guys in the dark.
This story didn't happen to me. It happened to my mother. I was just scrolling around on another spooky reader's channel when I happened to have seen a video called Creepy College Stalker Stories. That title immediately caused me to remember something that my mom once told me. I was a lot younger at the time, about 12 to 13, so I didn't think of it much. My mother is not 55 years old, and I'm currently 17. Now that I come to think about it, her story is a lot creepier than I first thought. I recall what caused her to start talking about this event. Let me start off by saying, at the time of this story, my mother was going to college at Texas Tech. She was getting a law degree. I forgot which year she was in. One night my mom was walking back from her tennis team's practice, thinking that she was all alone. There was no one on the streets, and the street lights were on. At one point she started to feel suddenly uneasy, and decided to take a glance behind herself. What she saw made her become very wary. A tall, large man was walking behind her a few meters away. I recall her mentioning that it wasn't strange to see another young adult walking around at night, but this person didn't seem very young. Judging by this man's build, she estimated that he was around 30 to 50 years old. It definitely was not a college professor, since most of them aren't out at this time of night, and are much shorter than this man was. Just to double check that this was just a normal pedestrian and not a creeper, my mom decided to pick up the pace. She was now speed walking down the street. A loud sound of shoes hitting the ground behind caused her to turn around and see the tall man was now sprinting towards her. Noping the fuck out of there, my mom had booked it. Due to her being very athletic, she managed to stay a good 5 to 7 meters ahead of this guy. He too was quite fast, taking a sharp turn around the corners and running into her apartment building. Her apartment happened to be on the ground floor. She quickly unlocked the door, ran inside, and locked it. My mom didn't turn on the light so that the man would think that there was no one in there. Next to the door, there were 2 large windows with see-through curtains. Peeking through the window, she saw the man approaching her apartment. Thinking quickly, my mom purposely fell on the floor and shuffled next to the wall, laying there so in case he were to look in, he couldn't see her. Yep, that's exactly what he did. Apparently his shadow could be seen through the curtains as he leered in. The guy stayed there for what seemed like 20 to 30 minutes before backing away. A note was slipped under her door, and then he was gone. My mom didn't get up until she knew for a fact that he was indeed gone. Getting up and looking around, she double-checked to make sure that the man was gone. He was definitely gone. Feeling relieved that the guy had left, my mother decided to see what was on paper. A piece of paper was blank, with a few words written largely in the middle. The note read, "A hard man is good to find." Apparently the creep had revered an old saying, "Good man is hard to find." To that, yeah. My mom went to the police the next day and filed a report. They took her statement and the note and said they'd keep an eye out. I don't recall if she said that they caught the guy or not. The world may never know. For some reason, I'm the person that attracts weirdos. I am really cute, or so I've been told, and very nice to people, and I'm also awkward in an adorable type of way. Unfortunately, despite all these qualities, the crazies are always drawn to me. This story is more creepy than scary. I just want people to be aware of their surroundings, and be careful judging a book by its cover. Actually, my day started off pretty normal. My normal weekend routine went according to plan. Only this day, I met a seemingly nice guy, who really seemed to have everything going for himself. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was jogging in the park in my neighborhood. As I came around the bend of the street that neared my house, there he stood, this absolutely gorgeous man. He looked like he had just stepped out of GQ magazine. Nice suit and tie. Dressed to the nines. He smiled and said hi to me, and then proceeded to tell me how cute I was, and asked me for my number. Honestly, I was shocked that such a hot guy would be interested in me. I was in my yoga tank and shorts, hair tied back, no makeup, sweaty from the jog, stuff like that. No alarm bells went off. Yet. Anyways, I gave him my number and got his, then went on my way. Within a few seconds of getting into my doorway, my phone went off. It was him texting me. I found it odd that he would be texting so quickly. I brushed it off as nervous, maybe, and sent emojis back. I thought nothing else of it for the rest of the day. I turned my cell phone off and proceeded to take a nap. This is when another alarm should have gone off in my head, but I let it slide yet again. When I turned on my cell phone after I woke up, there were countless text messages, calls, and voice messages from the guy asking why I didn't answer. I found this very strange to be hounding someone you just met hours earlier, as if you two were already in a relationship. So I called him and told him if he didn't chill out, he should lose my number. He apologized and said that it would never happen again. He then proceeded to ask me out on a date. I accepted, thinking what harm could come out of going for dinner and getting to know one another. Fast forward to date night. I found out a lot about him, like his prestigious educational background and his family's social standings. Let's just say they're a very prominent group of people. I was intrigued, and everything seemed to be going just fine. That is, until he started mumbling to himself at first. I thought it was just me overthinking things, but then he started to answer his own questions. I got pretty freaked out. While he continued to mumble to himself, I interjected. "Hey, is there anything you'd like to talk about?" He replied firmly, "No." Well, at this moment, I knew this would be our first and last date, and I suddenly understood why a handsome man from a well-to-do family was still single. It was clear that he has mental issues that need to be addressed by a mental health care professional. It was also clear to me that I would not be seeing him again for any more date. For some reason, I really can't pinpoint how, but it seemed clear to him as well. So we ate our dinner. The rest of the date went on in complete silence. We went our separate ways, or so I thought. A couple of weeks went by, and I was relieved that he hadn't contacted me, and I was thinking that it was very obvious that the first date was horrible and unnerving, and that we'd never see each other again. I mean, I wasn't ghosting, but there was really nothing further to discuss at this point. There wasn't going to be any more dates, or any more interaction for that matter. I was wrong. A couple of Saturdays later, I was on my usual jog path, and guess who else was there this time, in workout gear, smiling from ear to ear, running towards me. None other than Prince Charming himself. I was mortified. "Hey you," he exclaimed with excitement. "Oh, hi. How are you?" I answered uneasily. He replied, "Okay, just thinking about you and our future together." I was at a loss for words at this point. Then it dawned on me that if I didn't make my point clear, that I wasn't interested in him, that this sort of thing will continue to go on, because he's not catching the non-communication hint. So I said, "Look, you're a nice guy, but I don't think that you're the guy for me. I wish you the best in life. Good luck." Well, he said he understood, and kept on with his run as I proceeded to head home. I truly thought that that was the end of it, but after another week passed, he began sending me texts again, maniacally back to back, begging and pleading for another date, because he knew I was the one, and how his family wanted him to settle down and get married soon, and how he'd surely die without me. I didn't answer. I just blocked his number. Now I was just over the nonsense. The next week, my family went to our annual camping trip. This is when shit got real. He started calling me from random numbers, saying he knows where I am, and that he's watching me. Initially, I just shrugged it off, but when he told me what state my family and I were camping in, I freaked out. Because I hadn't told him any of this. He proceeded to tell me how anything could happen to me or my family because of how powerful and connected his family was, and how they make people just disappear. I told him to just go fuck himself and leave me alone, but to no avail. The harassment continued off and on for another month. During that time, whenever I would leave the house to go to work, run errands, or just get out, I would notice that his car was parked across the street from my house, watching me. I never told him where I lived. We'd only been on one date, for God's sakes, and I was in a lot of distress, barely sleeping because of every little sound I would hear in the night. I would think that it was him trying to break into my house. I tried to remain vigilant and undaunted in his presence, because I didn't want him to think that I was afraid of him and his antics. He knew everything about me, things that we have never discussed, and continued to threaten bodily harm if he didn't get his way. I stayed steadfast, but finally decided to tell my best friend, who is in the military and works in law enforcement, about the ordeal just to get some insight on my legal options and to see if I could get help. My best friend had asked for his name. I only remembered his first. I kind of forgot his last name. The stress of it all had taken a toll on me. So he traced him by his phone numbers, many of which were registered to him or his close family members. I don't know what my best friend did or had said, but I haven't had any more of these terrifying ordeals happen since. I'm grateful that he didn't follow through with his threats to harm me. I learned my lesson. Just because someone is drop dead gorgeous doesn't mean that they can't be batshit crazy. I had gone up to the shopping center that was about 30 minutes walk from my house. I'd taken the bus up there, but it only stops at the shopping center once an hour. While I would usually take the bus home from the shopping center near my house, the bus wasn't due for another 45 minutes by the time I had done what I needed to do, and my 10-year-old brother was at home alone. My mom has no problem with me leaving my brother home alone for an hour or two, because he can take care of himself for that long. So I decided to walk back to my house, instead of waiting basically an hour for the bus. On the way home, I saw a man who was maybe 40 to 45 years old, walking in the opposite direction of me. I was walking south, he was walking north. As he turned the corner to walk towards me, I got the impression that he didn't look right. Probably because as he was walking, he was just staring at me. As he walked past me, I got a sinking feeling, like when you're on a plane and it starts to descend. As I continued to walk, I felt like someone was following me. So when I got to the bus stop, I made it look like I was checking the bus times, which gave me an excuse to turn around. And once I did, my heart started racing. This fucker had changed directions and turned 180 degrees to walk in the same direction as me. He was walking faster than he was before, and this freaked me the fuck out. I was close to the road that I could usually turn up to get to my street. I turned up the street and had walked about 25 meters up it when I heard crunching of a chip packet that I knew I had passed. He was still behind me. I decided that I'd cross the road to put more distance between us, and to also get to the street that was across from me. From here, I could go a longer way home. This longer way home had a lot of corners, making following me a lot harder to do. This street also had a lot of teenagers who were home due to it being summer holidays. So if the guy tried anything, there was a lot of people who would likely hear me screaming. Now you may be wondering, why didn't you call the police? I'd been stupid, and left my phone at my house. So I had no chance of calling the police while I was walking. Even if I did have my phone, I probably wouldn't have called out of fear of provoking something. I'm about 172 centimeters and weigh about 64 kilograms. While my weight is mostly muscle, I'm not large enough to take on someone who's 2 meters tall and looks like they weighed twice what I did. So I was going along the long route. When I turned to look behind me, he was still there. This is where I started my plan to get back to my house. I turned the next corner and sprinted along the path as quickly as I could. I was on my house's street. If I was going straight home, I could have gone left, but I went straight ahead towards a smallish park that was just up the street from my house. The reason I did this was because I could go up through the park and around to get back to my house. As I was crossing the road to get to the park, I looked back and saw him jogging up the path I'd just come from. He saw me and started sprinting towards me. Luckily, I had a 150-meter head start. I ran through the park, up and around to the left. The area behind the park is like a maze, so this gave me an advantage. Also, I was behind the park and out of sight. I continued sprinting for a house that was an old shed in its front yard, and the shed was empty. The door was open, as always. So I hid in there, able to look out through a mirrored window, and he was looking around for me. He then walked the way that I was planning on going to get to my house. I was still too scared to leave the shed, so I'm waiting for about 10 minutes before I saw him walking back towards the park on his phone, and I heard part of what he was saying to the other end. Yeah, I lost her, but I think she lives around here. She's a crafty bitch, though. After he passed, I waited another 10 minutes before leaving the shed and sprinted towards my house. I called my mom, who happened to have called the police, who in turn called me. I gave a description of the man and refused to leave my house alone for a week. I've never seen him again, and the police report hasn't come up with anything. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.